Good morning. I am Rev Jill Washington here at St. Bridget's Spiritual Church of Edmonton, and today is January the 19th, 2025. So Happy New Year to those who are just joining us. I'm going to be talking today about near-death experiences, and I've been from this book called Lessons from the Light. And it's in regards to a Dr. Kenneth Ring did research about near-death experiences and the commonality of what people experienced afterwards. So I'm just going to go read through this as well, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, this is called Living in the Light, the Afterward. So in 1984, so he's talking firsthand, okay? So in 1984, I brought out my book, Heading Towards Omega, which was the first major study of the long-term after effects of a DNE. What my research showed was just as the DNE itself compromised a distinctive pattern of elements, so too were the changes that tended to develop in an NDE life afterwards, in the realm of beliefs and values, behaviors, and outlook on their life in general. NDEers, however, differ from what they may have been before. Their experiences show astonishing similarities. From a psychological standpoint, it was almost as if they had undergone much of the same territorial ordeal, triggered by the trauma of a nearly dying, which then unexpectedly gave rise to similar life-transforming insights, and then emerged from it to speak in a single voice and act from the secret knowledge of a shared vision. The result was that the DNEers I studied through, still diverse in their personalities, tend to share a common psychological profile afterwards. In short, most of them appeared not only to be transformed by their experiences, but also transformed in much of the similar way. In the 14 years that have elapsed since the publication of the Heading Towards Omega, many studies have confirmed my basic findings. In fact, at least 8 additional major investigations of NDEs after effects in the United States, England, Australia, and Italy, indeed in every country so far where such studies have been undertaken, and have afforded further evidence of the stability of this pattern. In beliefs, behaviors, values, and world vision, NDEers, at least in the West, seem to be much the same following their encounter with near death. So the fact of the general consistency of after effects may be noteworthy and impressive, but you may be wondering, just why am I introducing it here? The reason is straightforward. These studies show that whatever the nature of an NDEer, it is real in its effects. Furthermore, when we come to examine these effects specifically and in detail, you will quickly see, if you are not already convinced, that they are decidedly not the kind of changes one would expect in an NDE, were merely an elaborate hallucinations or some other kind of purely psychological phenomena. Thus, both the commonality of these changes among NDEers and their specific and evading character constitute still another argument in the belief that they are authentic. While I have indicated that the after effects patterns is widespread, I still have said nothing specifically about the elements that constitutes the pattern itself. If an NDE afterward can be delineated in terms of common psychological profile, then what precisely makes it up? Exactly, we have an intimidation of profile earlier. You will hear examples. Okay, so he earlier in this chapter, he talked about a woman who actually had a near-death experience through surgery, and she died, and she came back, and this was years and years before he actually did the study. And then she talked to him about her experiences and what she experienced after the fact. So he's making reference to her in this because her study was not done yet. So it validates his study as well. Okay? So I'm just going to go into the psychological and behavioral changes following a DNE. In several of the chapters to come, we explored some of the specific effects of the ND in some detail. So what I will do here is simply introduce them to you in a brief but systemized way. And rather than taking the time here to illustrate each of the components, I enumerate, instead I present some in a rich case history material towards the end of this chapter. So he's talking, okay. All right, so appreciation for life. Most NDEers come back into life with a much enhanced appreciation for everyday life, for the beauty of an old woman's face, for the joys and majestic power of nature, for everyday pleasantries and conversation. They see and see with greater delight what to many of us have simply become habit. Their sense of wonder and gratitude for life itself also tends to increase. Self-acceptance. Self-acceptance. Afterwards, DNEers come to have greater feelings of self-worth and self-acceptance. Feeling of personal insecurity, shyness, and exaggerated needs to be pleased or deferred to others are often replaced by self-confidence and outgoingness that may astonish those who knew them before their NDE. Concerns for others. One of the most striking and consistent changes following an NDE is an increase in compassionate concern for other people. To be of service to others is, as one man put it, more real than this world. To express love for one fellow's human is to give out a little of what one received in the light, and urges you to do so, in some cases almost unquenchable. So this being of service is very important. The reverence of life. Most NDEers find that their concern for others cannot be limited to human beings, but must unhastily extend to all life. So reverence for animal life, for nature, and heightened sensitivity for the ecological health of the planet as a whole tend to characterize the values of many DNEers afterwards. Anti-materialism. Following an NDE, a life centered on materialistic values and acquisitions for its own sake tends to be seen as empty and pointless. Interesting, eh? Anti-competitiveness. Many NDEers commit that afterwards they can no longer follow the common socially approved pathways that require one to compete with others for material rewards or success in life. Being somebody important or impressing others ceases to be important. Caring rather than achieving is what really matters. Spirituality. Interestingly, many NDEers will say that following their experiences they did not become more religious but more spiritual. By this, they seem to mean that the formal aspects of religion, in the sense of organization religion, becomes less important to them, and more universal and inclusive spirituality that embraces everyone comes to exert a deeper hold on their alliance. So being more spiritual, not looking at religion. Quest for knowledge. Many NDEers are imbued with a tremendous thirst for knowledge, which is often put in the service of their own spiritual search, to live in accordance with what they've learned in the light, and towards at that end to somehow recapture some of the knowledge they believe was implanted in them during their experiences, becoming prime motivations for an NDEer. A sense of purpose. That life is meaningful and that there is a sacred purpose to everyone's life become deep-rooted convictions of NDEers. Many come to feel that the task of their post-NDE life is to discover their own spiritual resilience and thus fulfill their mission in life. Fear of death. The NDE tends to vanquish one's fear of death completely and forever. While one retains the normal fears associated with the process of dying, the moment of death itself is regarded positively as a liberating transition into a sublime state that the NDEers know that they have already encountered briefly. Life after death. As a rule, NDEers become convinced that some form of sustained consciousness exists, awaits them following the death of the body. quite a few of them become more open to and believers in some form of reincarnation. Belief in God. By whatever terms they feel comfortable with, and almost regardless of what they had believed before, NDEers tend to that now they know with deep inner certainty that God exists. Some of them, however, simply prefer to use the expression "the light" in this context. These, then, are some of the chief defining attributes of a psychological profile of NDEers, a set of consistent and mutual reinforcing beliefs and values that tend to shape both their everyday behavior and view of their cosmos. Before the after effects of the NDE are hardly limited to such changes alone. Recent research has also disclosed a whole series of other effects of the NDE that point even more strongly to the conclusion that this phenomena brings about definite alterations in human functioning that can in no way be accounted for by purely psychological mechanisms. Naturally, it is to these few further and often extraordinary manifestations that we come to turn our next attention. So this, he talks about being more sensitive. Expansion of a mental awareness, paranormal sensitivities, healing gifts, being hypersensitive to different things that are around you. So the reason I'm bringing this up, and I could go into a little bit more detail, but is really things that you heard. Would they be hard for us to do without having an NDE experience? Because this is what they come back, and this is what's important to them, right? They're more self-aware. They're more aware of the world around them. They value themselves, and they value their purpose, and they value connecting with other people, and they value life, right? And it's just it's interesting because how do we get caught up in our everyday life, right? How do we get caught up and not really pay attention to what really is around us? Because we get caught in our own little boxes, I'm going to say, right? We do our little thing every day, and we don't really put in the thought of what's really going on around us, what is really around in this world, how are we really being in this world. And I think the NDE, so when I read this, I just thought how enlightened they were. And why isn't it something that we can't be enlightened without having an NDE experience, right? So it's just something I wanted you to think about. And so I'm just going to leave that with everyone and to think about as well. If you can also, how are you showing up in your life in regards to these examples of values and beliefs that the NDEers had after their experience, and how that changed their life? So can we actually change our life without having an NDE experience? That would be lovely. Okay, I want to say thank you very much for being with us today, and I hope you have a lovely day, and stay warm and drive safe. Thank you. Oh yeah, we have some announcements to make.
Do we? Yes.
Yeah, we do.
15th.
Yeah, the 15th we're having a psychic tea. It'll be on it'll be on the website. Okay, thank you.